And we are back, and we are doing some wrestling lessons with Tiger High, and I think this one is going to be informative for the most part. This is going to be the history, the crazy weird history of the WWF, WWF, and WWE Championship belt. Not the titles, the physical belt. So we're starting in 1963 when Buddy Rogers signed with Capital Wrestling Corporation, going up against the NWA. He was presented with the red belt with the little United States thing, that piece of shit garbage. But when San Martino won it, the title was stolen from him while he was sleeping in his car. So, and then they did not find this title until I think like 2 years, 2 years earlier than right now. It was in somebody's attic, and this was verified to be the stolen version of this title because it was temporary. He was given a blue championship with a Jurassic Black background, but a lot of people don't know, but there was one before that with a very Reggie Park-esque style, but once again, it was stolen from his car while he was eating, I think it was Italian food in New York. It was in Brooklyn.
It's like, can this bitch lock his car?
Right. This was in a Rolls Royce, too. The belt was never recovered. So they had to make a replica version championship with the dramatic black around it like you know today. But this championship caused some problems because the entire strap, front and back, was made out of velvet. So it got, a lot of static electricity. When Pedro Morales won this championship, he was the first one to make a custom belt from a Mexican belt maker. I can't remember who, but the belt was terrible. The main plate was separated to two different parts, and it had a blue strap, like the velvet blue strap, but it had like this lime green trim around the edges of it. It looked garbage. And if anybody can actually find it, send it to me. I would love to have that in my collection. Morales was given the famous WWF belt from Reggie Parks, because Reggie Parks at that point made all of the belts. But there was a problem with this one. Reggie Parks made the influence from the eagle from the Rockslander, which is also known as the Nazi eagle. And it was black, like the Nazi eagle. So this is also known as the Rockslander belt. So, this is when Reggie Parks made all the belts, which made some criticism because they looked like the NWA World Tag Team Champions at the time. The belt was later changed to get away from the Nazi sentiments. Obviously, this was in the late 1960s, so a lot of the Nazi propaganda stuff was still fairly much prevalent, even 30 years after the end of the war. So after a while, that adjustment was changed again. So it was still made by Reggie, and this was the famous Bruno Sammartino's second reign Billy Graham belt. So this one changed the look of the eagle, and it was on a red strap. Then they did a version later that was a dark blue strap to make homage to the original. Or to the original that wasn't the Buddy Rogers belt. But then this was also changed again because of the whole Antonio Inoki belt controversy. So they made it into a light blue strap. So once again, we're not even out of the 80s at this point, by the way. And this belt's already changed 4 times. No, like 7 times. WWF wanted a unique and very larger belt because at this time, all of the belts were very, very small and very compact. So the maker of this belt is relatively unknown. And they were getting criticism, especially from the NWA, because it looked similar to their tag team champions. So they introduced what we know as of today as the big green belt. And this was like halfway through the Bob Backlund reign. And this was the one where Hulk Hogan won in 1984 against the Iron Sheik. From here, they got rid of that belt because he only won this championship. So then they did a temporary dog shit Dan Milligan nonsense belt. They adjusted it again to more of a dramatic one, and then they also told their wrestlers that they could not make custom championships at this point. This was the 1968 to 1988 belt, but then there was another belt, and I think not a lot of people know about this. So there were two different ones. The 1988 belt, they changed to the infamous Hulk Hogan, very tall, very narrow belt with his face in the middle. Because at that time, the faces in the actual championship was popular, and Hogan had this championship for about 3 years at this point. But he hated it, so they had to change it. They made the belt that we know of today, the 1998 belt, or the 1988 belt that we know of today. But they also made the one for Andre the Giant at this time, because Andre the Giant was supposed to win at WrestleMania 3. He was supposed to be the WWF champion at this time, but his health was really bad, his back was bad, he was about to retire. But in 1998, the Winged Eagle was introduced. 1988. Did I say 98? Yeah. No, that was when it was gone. 1988, the Winged Eagle was introduced. The original had a silver background, and that was the one that Andre the Giant won and then sold to DiBiase. But very soon later after, they changed it to the all gold. And the variations of this, because the Ultimate Warrior was like a Vince McMahon project, so they really wanted Warrior to have different colored straps to really exacerbate that bright colored thing back in the 90s at that time. So we had the two that never made it to television, which were the light blue and bright yellow. But then we had the white and the purple. The purple obviously famous because Sergeant Slaughter had it, going up against Hulk Hogan, because Slaughter was the biggest heel at the time. So that was cool. But, to 1998, this also changed to what we know of as the Big Eagle belt, which is the Attitude Era belt. This one obviously was Stone Cold Steve Austin's first belt with the block letters and the blue strap, which paid homage to the San Martino belt, but there was backlash to that, so they had to readjust it to black, and then also they had to change it to the scratch logo, because that now we're starting to get into current era wrestling.
Right.
And they also had to change it to the scratch logo. So there are 3 different versions of that. Block with blue, block with black, and then scratch with black.
Okay.
Stone Cold Steve Austin went out of his way to make the Smoking Skull Championship. He commissioned this privately, and he introduced it without Mr. McMahon's knowledge. Mr. McMahon told him after that segment to never wear that championship again. The fans said something differently. On boards and forums, it was so popular that he brought it back for storyline reasons.
Right.
The Rock beat him as the corporate champion, and they were in production of the Brahma Bull belt. But plans changed. So The Rock dropped the championship to Mankind before the Brahma Bull belt was officially done.
Right.
So that's why it never made the television, and it was only on house shows, but it was incomplete. They wanted to do a very light testing on the crowd. It wasn't received well because they thought it was too gimmicky, which is weird because Smoking Skull. So in 2002, this is when, the championships were combined. So you still had Big Eagle, but then you had the world title because of the purchase of the WCW brand. This is when they made the scratch logo undisputed WWF champion. So there are 2 versions of this belt. There is the Scratch WWF and the Scratch WWE, because that's when they did the adjustment. So now from 2002 to 2005, they used that championship as the WWE champion, and they dropped the undisputed portion of that in 2003. In 2005, it came around. John Cena's Spinner Championship. There is rumors that this championship was the 3rd incarnation of the John Cena belt. The first 2 primary sketches have not been found to what we are currently aware of. This is all rumor, obviously, so we're not sure. The fans loved it, It was a gigantic success on everything, and JR even came out and said when they were doing charity work, the two most requested items for sick kids, because this is when they did Make-A-Wish, were the WWE John Cena US spinner was number one, and the John Cena WWE spinner was number two. So obviously there was something there. The variations of this championship, there were only two. The Rated R variation with Edge and the Ms. M variation. The spinner aspect of this championship was taken out in 2010.
Which is a lot later than I would have thought.
You would think so, right? In 2013, The Rock won the WWE champion from CM Punk, but he outright refused to wear the spinner belt.
Was that because of the rivalry he was embroiled?
No,
oh,
this
okay.
was a totally different sentiment. He always thought it was disrespectful. So the 2013 to 2014 belt was introduced, but it was a replica. There was never an official, created, 100% authentic that championship, because by 2012 they were already changing everything's logo to the current WWE logo. Because that's when the network was introduced. So they were already planning on changing everything over to the WWE network logo at that time. So in 2014 they unveiled the championship that we know of now. This was the championship right now is the second incarnation of this championship. So when it was given to Brock Lesnar, it was WWE champion on the bottom. But they changed the name to WWE World Heavyweight Champion as well.
And then they changed it back after the second draft.
Yes, but even though the championship is called the WWE Championship, they have not changed the lettering on the bottom. It still says World Heavyweight Champion on the bottom of the belt.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So that is at least to our knowledge, of everything of the history of the WWE Championship belt.
Hooray.
So, Peanut Gallery, did you learn anything interesting from that?
I learned a lot of interesting things. Too many to count.
Good Lord. I mean, the fact that the championship changed 10 times between 1963 to 1984 is insane.
Yeah, that's just the way that it is, I guess, sometimes.
Right? So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that portion of the show, but when we come back, we're talking about NXT TakeOver 31.
Hell yeah.